The other one I saw that we've been meaning to talk about for weeks now is The Act of Killing. This is a film about some guys in Indonesia, and Indonesia had a very bloody revolution in the 60s. And this is about the guys who carried out the executions. And they're still around. They were never punished because they won. And the filmmakers basically asked them to film a movie about the execution, sort of recreate them in whatever format they wanted. And then they followed them around and documented all this while they were doing it. This film is completely unreal. Like, imagine that in 40 years, Jason, they're doing a documentary about you, about doing this podcast, and you're like, yep, well, this is how I put the microphone together, and you know what, there was one day when I really found a better way to do this, and it was so much more efficient. Let me show you how I did that. Except it's not microphones, it's a human being, and you're killing them.
Yeah.
And it's just
yeah, they showed how to string the wire so you could take someone's neck off quicker.
Yeah.
And it's just
so
unbelievable.
casual.
Yeah. Well, and one thing to sort of note here, I'm coming like fresh off of this. I just watched this, so it's a little weird for me to try to talk about it because I'm still digesting it. There we go. But it's interesting to note that I never thought I'd ever sympathize with communists.
Yeah.
Because that's essentially who they were, killing, these supposed communists.
Yeah.
But it's very hard to know who to cheer for in this movie.
Yeah.
You feel just really uncomfortable the whole time because you're like, what they're saying kind of makes sense, but it's not right at the same time.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's the great thing about it is that, typically in documentaries, we spend time with the subject, and obviously these subjects are kind of directing the film in a way. And you kind of naturally become enamored with the subject of a film, regardless of who they are. But it's really hard to divorce your feelings about what these people actually did and the fact that they're kind of charismatic in some ways.
Yeah, and they're so casual about it too. Just sort of recounting these like terrible things that that they did, and then the fact that they're just sort of they're brushing it off almost as if it's like it was kind of a fun time. It's like, no, this wasn't or shouldn't have been fun at least.
I mean, and they talk about how, oh yeah, we did stuff way worse than anything you'd ever seen in a movie. Like we saw movies and then we were like, we got to do better than that. And it's like, you want to see violence, come hang out with us. Like, you haven't seen anything yet. Yeah.
It really reminded me of, and it was produced by Errol Morris, and it really reminded me of his movie The Fog of War, where, you're trying to get someone to kind of come to grips with the gravity of these acts they did, and they don't quite want to do that. Yeah. But it's kind of natural if you sit there and film him for days and days and days that it's going to come out.
Well, and it's interesting. They so it sort of follows like one main guy, and I wrote his name down, Anwar Congo. Follows him around, and then there's like a couple guys that he hangs out with, and then they bring in another guy who he's moved away, but they brought him back to film some scenes for this movie, and he was like another executioner. And Anwar's sort of like saying things like, yeah, here's all the things I had to do to sort of forget about all these horrible things I did. The other guy's like, oh, that's nothing. That's no big deal. Like, you just need to go, that's just a nerve problem. Like, why are you having nightmares? Like, we didn't do anything wrong. It's like, and I mean, the best scene in the movie for me, the scene that affected me the most was they're showing this guy, and he's going out with his wife and daughter, and they're at like a mall, and they're just walking around. His daughter's, he has this beautiful daughter and this beautiful wife, and they're just walking around having a good time. And over the top of it, they're playing audio of him describing all of the ways he killed people. And just saying, yeah, we ran them over with cars and we strangled them to death, and we did this and we did that, and it's just on and on and on. And then at the end of it, he's just like, yeah, we were never punished for it, and that's okay. And it's just like, how this? It's just an unreal film.
Yeah, and the whole thing too about it is that they're just they're like, oh, we're just wanting the truth to get out. Like, we're wanting to be open and free about this because they have that liberty, I think, and so they're taking advantage of it. By basically explaining everything that's happened, because by this point they realize probably nothing's going to happen to them, or at least they're to the point now where they're just like, they got to live their lives. If something were to happen to them, they'd be totally cool with it.
They're heroes.
They are. In a way, they definitely are. And they see themselves as, sort of popular figures amongst the community, which is a really strange thing.
And watching the movie, that's absolutely true. Nobody spits on them as they walk around. They're cheered as they enter buildings, and it's like, oh, there's the executioner. Come on in, let me buy you a drink. I mean, it's like, there's so many scenes in the film where it's like, man, the country's so great now that we got rid of all the communists. This whole area was communist, but now they're all gone. It's so great. And it's just like they have this pathological fear of the communists, and it's just like I can't imagine it.
In the way they're talking about, like, killing these people, they're like, we just found the most efficient way of doing it. And this is just me. Nobody mentioned like handguns.
Yeah.
Or like just guns.
No.
Which is obviously a pretty big topic here in America. But it's just weird. Like, you're like, oh, we got like this piano wire. I'm like, how is that like?
Yeah.
Could you not just shoot these people and put them out of their misery?
But that's the thing. It's all so visceral.
It is. It's strange.
They're not
it's
removed
so strange.
from it
they
at
aren't.
all.
And the thing that struck me was how visually stunning the movie is, because intercut with these interviews and the walking around scenes are these really kind of vibrant tableaus that the Congo and his fellow revolutionaries or whatever they direct part of the film, and it's these crazy, just
surreal.
They do a musical scene, and there's like they imitate like gangster movies and like all dressed in suits.
That's right. The kind of film noir scene. The interrogation is. It really brings up, these guys learned a lot of their criminality through Hollywood films.
Yeah.
And I thought that part of it was really
because they did a lot of their business outside the movie theaters that were showing the Hollywood films that we all grew up with. But of course, they're seeing them in a different light because they're like, oh, that's interesting. Let's try that on somebody.
Yeah.
Which is just so strange. There's one quote that I wrote down, and I had to rewind the movie to go back and write it down. It's a guy, he's just casually driving in his car. He's not one of the main figures, but he says this quote, and it really stuck with me as soon as he said it. And he's talking about sort of, being persecuted for these things, or actually not being persecuted. He says, war crimes are defined by the winners. He says, I'm a winner, so I can make my own definition. My head probably exploded at that point. I was like, how... I was like, that is so true. Like, it's so true, but it's so wrong at the same time. And so that like, as soon as I saw that, I was like, yep, this movie like won me over. Like, it's one that I definitely need to, revisit. Not anytime soon. I'm like I said, I like stopped it, got in the truck, drove over here, and I'm just like, I need a few weeks for it to settle down, but. It played at South by, and a lot of people were talking about it, and I've read a lot of reviews of it, just sort of on the fringe. Didn't read too many details about it. I'm glad I didn't, because it's definitely an experience.
I think it has a good chance of winning the best documentary.
I would have to agree with that. I've seen a few of them, and this one definitely stands out for the content. That's for sure.
Yeah.
It sticks with you.
Yeah. Amazing movie. It's on Netflix right now. It's out on DVD right now. You can go get it. Definitely one you need to see. Definitely one you need to see. A Place for Film is recorded at WFIU Studios in Bloomington, Indiana.